Honorable Justice Singh, Minister Mr. R.K. Singh, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, Manoj Mitta, Vipul Mutkal, Ramachandran, ladies, gentlemen, and friends. Without fear or favor, that is the theme of today's deliberations. How do we achieve such a police? A police which is not bothered or which does not look up to the politicians for directions, but which goes by what is written in the law books and the constitution of the country. A police which considers itself accountable to the people of the country. A police which upholds the rule of law under all circumstances, irrespective of the political complexion at the center or the state. That is the kind of police that we have been dreaming of. That is the kind of police we have been fighting to have for the last more than 2 decades. But how do we achieve it? Several committees, commissions have come and gone, and they have made their recommendations. The last authentic roadmap was laid down by the Supreme Court when in 2006 they issued a set of directions to the state and the central governments and said that these will hold good till such time as the governments make their own laws on the subject. The directions, let me emphasize, were a distillation of the combined wisdom of all the recommendations made by various committees and commissions which had gone into the aspect of police working over the last 30 years. The Supreme Court, I do not claim any copyright for the prayers made in the petition, nor can the Supreme Court say that they have given directions which were not known. All this is already contained. If you try to draw the cream out of the various commissions' recommendations, these are the 5 or 6 points that you arrive at. And these recommendations were summed up by the Supreme Court and given in the form of directions. This happened in 2006, and for the last 11 years we have been struggling to get the directions implemented. It's a sad commentary on the functioning of the democratic system that directions issued by the Supreme Court are also not complied with, and the states drag their feet and submit affidavits which are farcical, which do not reflect the situation on the ground, and which give a wrong picture to the judiciary. Now, after the Supreme Court gave its judgment, in between there were 2 other major commissions. One committee was appointed by the Supreme Court itself, headed by Justice Thomas. This committee was expected to go into the level of compliance, the status of compliance in the various states. In 2008, the committee was set up, and they came up with their recommendations came up with their findings in 2010. And Justice Thomas, his observations were that the committee is totally dismayed, that was the term used, totally dismayed by the kind of indifference shown by the various state governments to the subject of compliance of Supreme Court's directions. Then there was another committee headed by Justice Verma, although the context was altogether different. The committee, as you know, was appointed in the context of Nirbhaya Kand, and it was to suggest amendments in the law which would make women more secure in the country. That was the context. But believe me, I mean, if you have read the report, 28 pages of the report were devoted to police reforms only. And Justice Verma had no hesitation in saying that unless we bring about reforms in the police, women's security would also remain a pipe dream. He said that systemic reforms is what is required, and those systemic reforms must be carried out in the police if we want to improve the environment generally and for women's security particularly. That was his finding. But neither Justice Thomas Committee finding had any effect, nor Justice Verma Committee had any effect, and we are still struggling. In between, we had so many justices who dealt with the matter. I would like to make a special reference to Justice Singhvi. The fact of the matter is that the petition was not before him, but he managed to hijack the petition in a very adroit manner. And the matter came up before him. At one stage, I was worried that they might say that, my lord, this is a matter before court number 1. How are you taking it up? But I was able to, I had my own discussions with the Attorney General and the Solicitor General, and we agreed that this technical point would not be raised and Justice Singhvi would be allowed to deal with the matter. He took up the matter in a very crusading spirit, really. The tragedy was that he did not have a long tenure, and he retired before the matter could be concluded. And so after that, it was taken up by other judges who have their own style and a different style of functioning. No further comments on that. So now we are at a stage where we really, the end of the tunnel is not in sight. Now, at this stage, instead of going further, I would like to raise 3 questions. 3 questions addressed to 3 different bodies. 1 question to the Supreme Court, 1 question to the government, and one question to the people of the country. And when I talk of people, I mean not only the people, but it includes the media, it includes the NGOs, it would include people from all walks of life. My question to the Supreme Court is that once you have given a judgment, once you have issued a set of directions, is it not incumbent on you to ensure the implementation of those directions? Is it not incumbent on you to uphold the majesty of law? That you cannot get away with non-compliance. You cannot drag your feet in the matter. There's a time limit, and either you comply with it or you are hauled up. Supreme Court has the power to discipline the states. Why is that power not being wielded? Why is the Supreme Court going soft on the states which are, if I may say, throwing dust in the eyes of the judiciary? Throwing dust because they give affidavits that we have done this, we have done that, whereas the fact of the matter is that on the ground nothing has happened. And whatever compliance they have done is also, in the process they have, for example, the State Security Commission, yes, they have set up on paper, but they have diluted the composition, they have reduced the powers, they have curtailed the charter, and the recommendations are not binding. So what's the purpose? What kind of compliance is this? You are, in fact, not complying with it, with the direction, and yet you are pretending to have complied. This is the picture which emerges when you analyze, when you go deeper into what the states have really done. As you know, some states have passed executive orders which do not comply with the directions, and some states have passed acts. Now, the states which have passed acts have really been very, very clever, because the Supreme Court judgment contained a sentence, and it was a mandatory sentence, it had to be there in the judgment, that these directions will hold good till such time as the states or the center do not apply their own law, do not legislate their own laws on the subject. The sentence had to be there because the Supreme Court can fill a legislative vacuum, it cannot legislate. Now the states took advantage of this. They said to hell with the rest of the judgment, they just picked up these 2-3 sentences and they legislated, legitimizing the status quo. I repeat, legitimizing the status quo and not really passing an act which would otherwise have been, should have been in keeping with the letter and spirit of the Supreme Court's directions. So the big question is, when the Supreme Court issues directions, is it not also binding, incumbent, necessary for the Supreme Court to ensure their compliance? This is my question to the judiciary. The second question is to the government. Government has been, talking of what? Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. This we hear almost every day. Yes, an absolutely laudable concept. There can be no two opinions about it. But how do you achieve Vikas? You talk of development, you talk of economic progress, you talk of India emerging as the fastest growing economy of the world. Yes, I share your dream, I share your vision. But economic development has certain prerequisites. It requires a foundation. Foundation has to be of what? Of stable law and order. If you don't have good law and order in the country, you can forget about economic development. All the structure which you are raising may one day come crashing down. And that did happen in Haryana. It happened in Haryana when 20,000 crore of property was devastated within 15 days. And Haryana was pushed back by at least 10 years. Are we waiting for a similar catastrophe to happen in other states before we shall wake up to the need and urgency of having good law and order first and then building up an economic superstructure? You cannot have economic development without the foundation of good law and order. And good law and order in the country requires a reorganized, a restructured, a rejuvenated police. Are we working for that? So my question to the government is, have your priorities. Are your priorities right? When you talk of economic development, have you ensured that there is good law and order in the country? That's my question to the government. Because if they don't understand and if they don't give a proper answer to this question, an honest answer, I think, as I said, the economic superstructure can any day come crashing down with law and order collapsing in that state, as happened in one state recently. My third question is to the people of the country. We all complain every day or at least every week. There is some act of omission or commission of the police in some part of the country, and then police is hauled up and police is in the dock. That police has committed this atrocity, this high-handedness, this custodial death or violation of human rights, etc. Just any number of complaints against the police. You want the police to change, don't you? Or you want to live in a system where you have problem in getting your FIR registered? Then you have to raise your voice. Are you raising your voice for police reforms? Do you support police reforms? You have to articulate your views forcefully in a manner that it reaches the corridors of the parliament. So we all have responsibility. We all have responsibility. The Supreme Court had its responsibility. The government has its responsibility. The people have their responsibility. Let us all understand what our responsibility in the matter is. Police reforms may appear as just one of the reforms, as one of the learned speakers said, but it's very pivotal, it's very central. It's like a pillar which is holding the entire structure. It's like the central pillar of the criminal justice system. And if the central pillar is not strong, then you can't have, the other pillars will not hold good. When we talk of police reforms, we don't want police reforms, as some people understand, to strengthen the police, to empower the police, which may go berserk and create mayhem. No, we don't want police. We don't want this for the glory of the police. We want police reforms for better security to the people, for better protection to the women, for better governance, to ensure that human rights are upheld, to ensure that the rule of law is enforced under all circumstances. That is our objective when we talk of police reforms. And one of the learned speakers used the word independence. I don't talk of independence. No, police will not be made independent. Police has to be autonomous, and autonomous for certain purposes. operational autonomy. That is what I talk of. Yes, in matters of investigation, yes, they have to be completely free from any external influences. Well, this is the kind of police we must have in this country, and I believe that if India is to emerge as a modern, progressive, forward-looking nation, a great power in the Committee of Nations, if that is to happen, we have to have police reforms. Thank you.
I have handled many briefs, but nothing gave me greater pleasure than appearing for Prakash Singh in the Supreme Court. His thorough preparation and his real concern to see that the police don't carry out the wishes of the political masters, but obey the rule of law and discharge their functions without fear or favour. And one radical suggestion I have, when will this happen, make Prakash Singh an ad hoc judge of the Supreme Court. Prakash Singh, Supreme Court also has its limitations. They can't enforce by themselves the directions they've issued. They require another Prakash Singh to approach them. And of course, different judges have different mindsets, different way of looking at things. But on the whole, the judiciary, let me say, has been very forthcoming in protecting police reforms, in realizing the importance of independent or rather impartial, free investigation of the police. And actually the impression one had before is police station mein jayega, oh my God, it's a torture house. Usko maar dega wahan. We submitted to all 3-degree method, 3rd-degree method. Now that must be removed, but it requires a concerted effort by everyone. I'm not saying Jairam Ramesh Congress Party or so-and-so BJP party, all politicians want to butter the bread and they want to keep the police on their side. There are very few exceptions in that. So therefore we require Prakash Singh to go again to the Supreme Court and again tell the Supreme Court this is what you have done and please do something more and make police investigation a reality and also make it something which will be to the benefit of the common citizen and also rightly linked with the women's security. I think I've spoken enough with my bad throat and I won't say anything more except again to thank Prakash Singh and all the distinguished members on the dais. Thank you.
Mr. Sorabji, there's one question which my friend Vipul Mudgal is anxious to ask you.
Sir, when I had met you on behalf of Common Cause to take this forward, you had suggested that we should file a contempt petition against all the state governments. So is that a viable way?
Against all the state governments?
Against the state governments which are not implementing.
Well, file a contempt petition, but I don't know whether all state governments will be held liable for contempt. They'll find some way out. Mobilize public opinion. Filing contempt petitions and all that gets lots of public opinion. People must get up and say this can't be done. And we won't allow this to be done. Whichever the regime, whichever the party in power.
Thank you, Mr. Sorabji.
I have one question to Mr. Prakash Singh.
Just a matter of elucidation. Contempt petition was filed against not all the state governments,
a few of them,
but the most non-compliant states. We just picked up, and but somehow the Supreme Court we found. I mean, although they issue contempt notices on very small matters, but in this case, a case of such importance, they were hesitant in issuing even a contempt notice. The maximum which we had was with Justice Singhvi asking the chief secretaries to fall in, in police jargon, fall in the Supreme Court and explain what they were doing. That was the maximum that was done. Otherwise, the contempt petition is actually still pending.